What's up, Dolphins? I'm Jim Grieshaber. Call me Gries. The owners' meeting's in full effect in Phoenix, and read Jon-Eric Sullivan's lips. De'Von Achane is not available in a trade.
Hey, I'm Jeff Zgonina. It's like to talk about Dolphins offseason.
Kyle Krabs, host Locked On Dolphins. We're 22 days away from the 2026 NFL draft, but who's counting?
Fins up. It's the Dolphin Squad. Everything Miami Dolphins, every week. Breaking down all the big hits and game-changing plays from South Beach. The way only the Locked On Podcast Network can. Sunshine, speed, and squad goals. The Dolphin Squad Show starts now.
On the number one sports podcast network in the world, the Locked On Podcast Network. We are, of course, live on YouTube. Then we finish, upload, you download. Apple, iHeart, Spotify, Stitcher, Podbean, wherever you get your podcast, whatever Tegna TV affiliate or website you're watching on. And, of course, one other one. Yeah, Roku as well. Over-the-top television. That's Kyle Krabs to your far right. Former Dolphin Jeff Zgonina in the middle. And Kyle, I think he's making it okay through this time of year. He had the deep, dark, like, when he was counting the days to the draft, did you see the darkness in the eyes of Kyle Krabs? I can't determine if that's lack of sleep or if it's diabolical or what it is, but it's that time of year.
It's just bitterness. He's not going to get the pick he wants.
Listen, with 11 picks, I better get at least one.
You'll get one. You'll get more than one, Kyle.
11 picks, and Sully was my guy in the GM hiring process. My expectation is give me 2 or 3, and I'll be happy with that.
The way you've been going, I guess we're gonna get Ruben.
I guess, yeah. I mean, I'm not driving the train like Gries is, but
but you've been right so far. So that's what I'm saying. Gries is gonna be your best friend.
I know we're in this together. We gotta stick together. We gotta get you on the good side.
Who, me?
Yeah.
Think of it this way, right? Imagine every single day at practice at the University of Miami, you got Mesidor and Bain going against Maui Noah. I mean, you don't even have to be a University of Miami grad like I am to figure it out, Those 3 guys going against one another every day in practice, iron sharpening iron. And, it would only make sense that the Dolphins would take one of them if they're there. But, I mean, Kyle's a little more optimistic than I am, I don't think Bain or Maui Noah is going to be there when the Dolphins pick at 11. If they don't trade up, like we talked about last show, they're not getting either one of those guys, and it's a moot point.
Probably not, So, I mean, but it is what it is. But, again, today, wasn't Indiana's pro day today? Speaking of pro days, yeah.
Yeah.
Get Gries off the Miami bandwagon, the guys who beat Miami in the championship game.
Yes, they did. They did. I can't say a word. They were a great team, tremendous. And Curt Cignetti changed the whole sport and the way things are done. You think of these kids who are doing a pro day. Let's just acknowledge that, can we? I mean, for all the kids out there who now can go to the University of Indiana and play football, you don't have to just go to Purdue and be a Boilermaker in that state anymore.
Well, I think if you're going in that state, you're going to Notre Dame before you go to Purdue or Indiana to play football. That's for sure. Now, you're going to go play basketball. It's a little different. Purdue, yes, So, I mean, that's what it is in that state.
It's going to be a big weekend Purdue-wise in basketball. But Indiana's got, Kyle, to that point about Indiana and Curt Cignetti and what they've done, there's a whole bunch of kids working out today who never would have been anywhere near these scouts, these teams, these players if Curt Cignetti hadn't done what he did there. I mean, it just – the story just keeps on getting better.
Yeah, it's really impressive how quickly that program turned and pretty much everywhere he's been, right? At JMU before that, and that team became a force to be reckoned with with the mid-majors pretty darn fast. So I think there's something to be said about the kinds of players that Cignetti has been able to capture as a recruiter and the transfer portal, and a lot of guys that are mature, right? Like this starting lineup in Indiana rivaled a few NFL teams by the end of the season after injuries kicked in because they had a bunch of mentally and physically mature 22, 23-year-old guys that have had to scrap for everything. 2 stars, 3 stars, not a lot of blue blood pedigree recruits going into that program. And I think there's something to be said about in the NIL era where guys are committing to a school and playing a year and getting offered more money to go somewhere else. So they transfer somewhere else. Guys who have had to kind of scratch and claw. And Cignetti's done an awesome job kind of identifying those players that have that intangible element to them. And as the Dolphins, to go to the draft element of it, they try to build their own culture up. And both Jeff Hafley and Jon-Eric Sullivan have talked about finding guys that are wired the right way. That's probably a good place to look, because you probably find a few guys that are wired the way that you need them to be to come into Miami and have success.
I mean, like you said, Cignetti even came from, the Saban tree at one stop, in Alabama. So, he's been around it. He knows how to build a good program, being at Alabama with Saban, he knows how to demand his players and coaches, to perform to the best. And he did a heck of a job there in Indiana. It's hard for me to say that, Gries, I know, but I'm going to say it, he did a heck of a job, at Indiana, to bring that dismal program back to relevance.
The culture is so different now. And in Tommy Tuberville, and I don't know if you saw much, Z, but what Tommy Tuberville is saying right now in Congress about fixing college sports, obviously a major Division I football head coach, and talking about limiting one transfer and limiting it to one transfer before players have to sit out. I mean, it is brand new. It's the wild, wild west, and guys are on their second, third, fourth school, by the time. And I just think that a lot of the old guard doesn't like it, see, because the players finally have a little bit of power here. And this is what I think of it right now, because when you look at those kids, right, all those years, kids would get stuck or trapped at a program. You'd be the third quarterback at Alabama, 10 years ago. That's why Saban didn't like it, because he couldn't stockpile the top three guys at every position anymore and bury them their entire careers. So it opened up for the players now, Z, to where kids can take a path like Cam Ward took and be the number one pick in the draft, where that could never have been a possibility. Fernando Mendoza would never have existed 10 years ago. Never.
No, but I still think it's wrong. I still think you can't go from school to chase NIL money. That's ridiculous. It ruins programs. It costs, coaches jobs. It's ridiculous. I mean, when I went to school, like you said, you signed on there. If you wanted to transfer to another Division I school, you had to sit out a year. You couldn't go from school to school to school year after year after year. That's ridiculous. I'm totally against it. I liked how, President Trump brought a bunch of people together, and had a little forum a couple weeks ago or a week ago and tried to discuss it and try to figure it out, because, we're going to ruin college sports, not just football. I mean, basketball, baseball. I mean, every sport, these kids are transferring after 1 year, just chasing NIL money. And I think it needs to stop. I need to go back to, you sign somewhere, you're stuck there. It's no different than being drafted or, signing a contract in the NFL. Once you sign it, you're stuck. You can quit, you can retire, but you can't do, unless that team releases you, you're stuck for life there, even after you retire. Like Barry Sanders is still a Detroit Lion, and he can't go sign anywhere else because they still own his rights, So I believe that's how it should be.
Wow. What are your thoughts on that, Kyle?
I generally agree that the way in which Pandora's box has been opened to now you can transfer anywhere, anytime, any place, any dollar amount, no questions asked. A lot of these kids don't have to give the money back that they collected from the first place, and then they get the double dip and go get somebody else's money. It's very messy. Like just the floodgates opened with so little regulation so fast that I do think it is unsustainable. And if you want to transfer, I think you have the right to transfer, but I think whatever terms are set in those NIL contracts, and to just go jump ship for a financial offer, it's I like there to be some level of ramifications to just, I change my mind or I'm getting paid more here, right? Because that gives you free license to. I just did a cat, his draft prospect profile the other day. He played at 4 schools in 4 years. He didn't stay at a single program for more than 1 year. Mm. And I was like, oh my, this is incredible. And how to put the NFL lens on it, I think it's helpful to get an idea on how these guys respond to not having under the table funds, but it's all out in the open now, right? So you get to see how guys respond. You can see how guys play, how they play before finances and then after finances, and how what matters to them beyond once they're compensated. But it is so messy right now. It really is a nightmare to try to regulate everything. And they're already going to have a hard time putting everything back in the box but I think it's something that they do need to figure something else out, because I don't think it's particularly sustainable.
Well, I know that I want to say it was Georgia that might have sued a couple kids for leaving after they took money and trying to get it back or whatever. That's what should happen. If you take the money and run, you should have to give it back. Or if you do want to transfer, I guess I'd be fine with that. But you have to sit out a year. You can't just go and start up and play right away. That's not right.
It really is. I mean, there's no right answer to this, right? I mean, we both be right on both sides of this, whether you're a player on that side or program coach, because for years, Z, there's no denying what the NCAA and what these big programs did to the kids. And so there has to be a line somewhere between burying a kid, taking away a kid's rights to play, and in many cases earn a living, as opposed to kids just leaving that door open, revolving door, and no stability for any of the programs. There has to be something somewhere in the middle. And that's what Tommy Tuberville was talking about. He was talking about having there be one transfer before you have to sit out a year. Like, everybody gets a freebie, and then you have to sit out a year. And something has to be done about the money, because anytime you have those boosters coming in there, Z, just throwing money around like the Wild West around any college program, it's never good, right?
No, but originally the money was set up so you get paid for your likeness, for what they were selling at the bookstore, right? That's how it all started. And now it became the booster frenzy of like, I want to win tomorrow, so I'm going to dump in a couple $1 million here, and we're going to go buy players. It's Moneyball. Here we go. And that's where I think that it needs to be reeled in a little bit, because some schools can't afford it, and now you just can't compete. I mean, I know the NIL is not very big at Purdue, especially for football, and that's why we're having a hard time competing against other schools in the Big Ten. We had a hard enough time even before NIL to get recruits to come there. Joe Tiller did a good job, with Drew Brees and everybody. We had a nice little run of quarterbacks, but besides that, it's been hard to, to attract, some talent there, with Notre Dame being so close, and, Indiana being close, and, Illinois, and all, and all those other schools around there. Ohio State's not that far away. So it's hard to, draw in, good talent, especially at Purdue. Now it's even worse.
Yeah, with Indiana and Cignetti doing what they're doing, which takes us back to today. And Mendoza, they say he looked pretty good, Kyle. I know you're our draft guy. You're the guy who, grades the players and all that for A to Z, for Locked On Dolphins and other outlets. What are you thinking after Mendoza's performance at Pro Day? 53 out of 56, they said, had a couple of balls dropped, looked pretty good, letting it fly on the deep routes. And I guess the most important part about it, and this is the thing to a lot of people, because he was mostly in the shotgun throughout his college career, he alternated back and forth between being under center and being in the gun at the workout today.
Yeah, he's going to need that experience for working with Kubiak in Las Vegas, because you think about Seattle and what they did so successfully with their Super Bowl run. It was getting Darnold up under center, and he had that exposure, with what he did. He had to stop in Minnesota with Kevin O'Connell, and then he had to stop in San Francisco with Kyle Shanahan. Sam Darnold did. So he got plenty of experience in that world. And that will be a little bit of a culture shock for Fernando, but you've heard that they already have his quarterback coaches working on installing the Raiders offense, right? Like, it's this one set in stone. So I like hearing the fact that he did take the time to get up under center and take some reps at the Pro Day with that, because that will be a very relevant piece of what he's asked to do at the NFL level, and getting a jump start on that, I think will be helpful for him, because that's got to be second nature for you, right? I mean, you sit back and you really think about the amount of volume of information that you have to process in. But if it was the Dolphins the past few years, it might be as little as 8 seconds by the time you get out of the huddle and get lined up, and then you got to move guys around and read the defense, right? Like, all of that, you can't be thinking about, okay, get my foot up and make sure I take my foot with my first step under center with my right foot and open up the right way. It's got to be like this, right? So getting those reps, I think is great for Fernando, and I'm excited to see what he does and what the Raiders put around him.
Yeah, when you skip the combine, it's pretty common practice now, Z, to skip the combine and throw to your own receivers on your own, at your own facility, on your own field. And, every report that I'm seeing about Mendoza is that he killed it today. Everything about Mendoza that I'm reading today says he killed it, Z, that he had a great workout, that he didn't hurt himself at all, that if anything, it's just more cemented, more entrenched that the Raiders take him one.
Well, yeah, I mean, Coach Kubiak was there, and the OC was there from the Raiders. I mean, They went there to see their guy, and talk to their guy, and and he's going to be the one. We all know that. We've known that for a while now, and I think, Coops is going to do a good job with him, and you can get him going, get him under center and all that with the boots and everything and the play action. And I think the kid's going to, turn into a good quarterback.
One of the quotes I'm seeing from Louis Riddick, and a lot of people respect what he has to say, Kyle, is that Mendoza's pro ready, that from the second he walked on that field at the workout, the command was there, the leadership was there, the way that he conducted himself, the way that he went through the motions, the way that he answered the questions, that you're looking for that as much as anything. And he walked on the field like QB1 from the start.
Yeah, and especially relative to this class of quarterbacks. I think he's miles ahead of the rest of the group.
Yeah, there's no clear number two, right? So when you have that knowledge and this isn't a Peyton Manning, Ryan Leaf thing. I know it seems ridiculous now that there was once a Peyton Manning, Ryan Leaf thing, but it was a huge debate. Peyton Manning or Ryan Leaf, who do you take number one? But there is no debate when it comes to Fernando Mendoza. There might be some debate with some other positions, guys. How about, and we'll talk about this on the other side, how about Jermod McCoy? Everybody talking about Colton Hood from Tennessee, but McCoy, who missed his season with an injury in 2025, opening some eyes at Volunteers Pro Day. And I love this time of year because there's always a guy who was hurt, a guy who comes out of nowhere and starts to rise up that draft board. So it's exciting, fun times. As always, it's your Dolphin Squad Show on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. It's Gries, it's Z, it's Kyle Krabs. We got a quick spot to get in here for Robinhood, and then we will keep it going with more of the show after this. There we go. Robinhood, it is all good. What if sports were traded like markets? Now you can put your sports IQ to work in real time with Robinhood prediction markets. It's not you against the house. It's you participating in a live market. You can buy or sell your positions live all game long. Use your sports knowledge in the moments that matter. Robinhood prediction markets changes the game. It's people moving the action. So when momentum shifts, you can move with it. Look, I always knew the game, right? But never had a dynamic way to apply that knowledge. Now I can actually take part live in a market powered by people. You're no longer just a spectator. Play by play, you decide. Trade every play with Robinhood, now available across the U.S. Download the Robinhood app now to begin. Futures and cleared swaps trading involves significant risk and is not appropriate for everyone. Event contracts are offered by Robinhood Derivatives, LLC, a registered futures commission merchant and swap firm. Want to say thanks to our everydayers out there, and obviously you can join the Locked On Dolphins Everydayer Club. Kyle, a big part of the success that the channel has had, number 10 on the number one sports podcast network in the world, has been the Everydayers. LockedOnDolphins.supercast.com. Ad-free audio, Kyle, invite only, members only, Locked On Dolphins group chat, all kinds of other perks for you and your everydayers who are the backbone of the Locked On Podcast Network.
Yeah, the community Discord's a great way to connect with other listeners of the show, and I know there's a lot of folks that really covet the chance to zip through the content, and the ad-free content and programming is a great perk as well. So as Gries said, the link you can find in the show description, and Gries, business has been good. I actually think we were 7th last month.
7th,
so moving on up. Yeah,
there you go.
Yeah,
moving on up. It's all that hard work you're putting in, Kyle. I'd love to sit here and say it's the squad show, Z right there in the middle, but no, man, it's seriously, this is the time.
You'd be 3 if I wasn't on the show.
People like Kyle Krabs really set himself apart. I'm doing triple duty today. I have a Padres postcast, and I'm doing a Locked On Canes show with Alex Dono. 3 Locked On Podcast Network appearances for me today, guys. Pull that down.
More Kane stuff.
Still not doing the Marlins. They didn't get the cards and letters, guys. The Marlins don't register enough to do a postcast. Sorry. I mean, when they don't register enough with the fans, the owners, the city commission, the people who live there, I mean, it's kind of tough. But, man, it's
WQAM got them, though.
QAM.
That was a big change. WQAM ended up getting it for games this year.
Oh, they got them back, the Marlins?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah.
The old school flagship, WQAM. I remember the 97 and 03 World Series, man. Unbelievable what they were able to do. That's why you'll never get me to say anything negative about Mr. H, Wayne Huizenga. What a great owner he was between bringing the Panthers and obviously the transition. People forget about the transition, Kyle, from the Robbie family how rocky that was and what a terrible position Joe Robbie left everybody in. I don't mean to speak ill of Joe Robbie. He's not here to defend himself, but that was a big mess that Wayne Huizenga inherited there. Kept the organization winning, kept things going with Don Shula, Dan Marino. Then Jimmy living down in the Keys. That was a little too much heat, too close to home when Jimmy moved to the Keys after he left the Cowboys. He had already won at the University of Miami. Now he's in the Keys, and everybody's saying the game passed Shula by. And Wayne Huizenga had to navigate the Dolphins through that. I shudder to think, man, where would this organization have been if it had not been for Wayne Huizenga's stewardship through those times?
You know what the saying is, hungry dogs run faster, right? So I think that's the Jimmy Johnson coming down from Dallas and the South Florida and the Keys experience, right? Like, I think there's probably something that we could talk about. I don't know if we want to do it now, but the Dolphins now, since you're speaking about ownership transitions, Gries, and from the Robbies to Wayne Huizenga, and they made the Dolphins. Stephen Ross made a pretty significant change over the last couple of years, where Bruce Beal was kind of in that talking point to potentially take over the team, and he's since transitioned it to his daughters, and his son-in-law Danny Silman was a big part of the hiring process, and he's obviously a very successful sports business entrepreneur, and has been a big part of like the whole F1 South Florida, bringing international soccer to Hard Rock Stadium. And I think that transition, not having to change families, right? I think that has a chance to be a pretty meaningful, established lineage where the people that are going to take over for Steven when the time comes, they're starting to get a little bit more hands-on. And you really think about the Hard Rock Stadium complex and the Miami Open, which they just had, and the F1 race that Steve has said makes more than they make in season ticket sales for the Dolphins for the whole year. They make an F1 for a weekend, right? Like, it kind of becomes turnkey, right? Like, you should never be worried about if it stays in the Ross family based on all of the events and the sports destination that the Hard Rock complex has become. Are you ever going to feel like you're worried about cash flow? Like, there's some teams that they don't have liquidity for in a given year to be aggressive, or if they want to spend on a player, if they need to fire a coach or whatever, right? But with how this is set up, and now keeping it in the family where we're not going to strip it down for parts, and the family's not going to sell it because they have to pay the taxes on and all that stuff. I think it's a pretty meaningful note that we've started to see start to turn for Stephen Ross and his legacy as his chapter as the owner of the Dolphins.
Yeah, I think it's a great thing what he's doing, because you look at someone like Denver or the Saints, just the battle between the family of who gets it, who doesn't get it. This person get it, and it ends up being sold because they can't decide. Now you look at what Irsay did. He had his daughters in there. He had them, in positions to learn the business and have an opportunity to run it. Once he left this earth, and I think they're doing a great job. I think the players like having them around, and the coaches. I thought at first having an owner on the sidelines was a little risky. As a coach, always looking over your shoulder, but she just wants to learn. She wants to, really learn football from the ground up, and she's doing it. And, they had success last year, and I hope they continue, because I think it's a great way that he was able to spin that off, from his legacy to their legacy.
Speaking of legacy, the Raiders just had something like this within the owners' meetings just ended in Phoenix, and there's a plan that Mark Davis had put into place for succession for the Raiders. It includes a minority owner who is Egon Durban, who has recently purchased a stake in the franchise, and he has an option now to purchase a controlling interest in the team should I decide to sell. That's a quote from Mark Davis. And to Kyle's point and Z's points, guys, I've seen this on both sides. I used to do this a long time ago now, but I did the Cardinals Network postgame shows on radio and did all the draft shows on location. And I speak intimately when I speak of how pathetic the Cardinals are as an organization. I had an inside seat for years. And I remember players being worried if they didn't make a ton of money that they were getting charged for extra gloves, extra sweats, extra hats, lunch for their family at the team facility that's free from other teams and things. It's not, the NFL might have a pretty wide scope, Z, of what teams and franchises have to do, right? But there's a lot of gray area in there that a lot of teams and a lot of organizations take advantage of. And so for the Dolphins, Z, to the point of being consistently ranked at the top, right at the top in terms of the off the field stuff, it's a great place to play. They treat you so well from top to bottom. They treat your family well. Those things really actually matter a lot. And so when an organization like the Dolphins gets it right on the football field, it's going to have a little bit of everything in terms of appeal for people, because you've already got so much of that appeal. And to Kyle's point, bring it back full circle, you don't have to worry where the checks are coming from. You don't have to worry about anything shady going on with the ownership group. You're just rock solid.
Well, yeah. I mean, for a free agent to sign somewhere, I get it. They'll look at their report card of what the facility is and all that, but that doesn't mean anything. I mean, at the end of the day, they want a ring. They want to raise the Lombardi. You'll go to New England and get beat down by Bill Belichick because you have Tom Brady and you got a chance to go to Super Bowl every year. You just do that. I mean, that's just what you guys do, especially when you get later in your career. You start chasing that ring if you don't have one. And, and that's what it comes down to. So, yeah, it's all great, those report cards and everything. But at the end of the day, if you're not winning on the field or have a chance to win on the field, a lot of guys still won't go there. They just want to win at the end of the day.
And I think that's part of what the struggle has largely been for the Dolphins the last 15 years or so, right? Is they've always been active players in free agency, but they haven't been upper echelon competitive teams. So you got to pay that extra tax. Everybody talks about like the no state income tax and all that kind of stuff. But if all other things are even, and it's a team that has a chance to win a Super Bowl and a team that went 7-9 last year, the team that has a chance to go to the Super Bowl is normally going to win a head-to-head for a player's services, right? So you ask yourself, with it being South Florida, with the amenities being what they've become, with what the team's track record has been, what are the kinds of players you're attracting in free agency, right? And that's where kind of the Miami Country Club stigma the last 3 years or so has kind of come from, where guys come down. They don't practice super hard. Mike's not super hard on the players. They don't practice super intense. They do thud all through training camp, yada, 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 right? And to bring that full circle to what we started with, hungry dogs run faster. So that's why I kind of like this approach that we're talking about. And Jon-Eric Sullivan and Jeff Hafley both talked about it this week at the owners' meetings about establishing physicality and creating the kind of culture that they want. And Jeff Hafley said, I'm going to sit down with every player and ask you what your goals are. And they're going to have a young team, right? They're going to draft a bunch of players. They're not bringing guys in free agency and spending the bad team tax and then selling yourself on no state income tax to get veterans to come down. And they're like, hey, this is pretty nice. I'm getting paid more than I would have somewhere else. It ain't too bad. It's kind of chill, right? Like, you got guys that are hungry that are coming in. And Jeff Hafley says, I'm going to sit down with all these guys and I'm going to ask them what their goals are. And when it's 110 degrees outside and you don't feel like doing what it takes to get to where you want to go, I'm going to remind you what your goals are. So don't be full of it. Like, I dig that kind of stuff. I dig Jon-Eric Sullivan saying, this is not going to be a place for everybody. And I'm okay with that. Good. That's what this franchise needs, right? Because the foundation is so strong about the things that we're talking about, how the facilities have been built and the way they treat the players. But you got to get guys to come in and appreciate it while also grinding to get to where this team needs to be competitive on an annual basis, as compared to a player that kind of went through the mud in a place that doesn't have those other things and comes down and realizes how nice it is here, and you get paid extra and there's no state income tax. And it's just kind of been this cycle that they've been stuck in. And how do you break that? And I think you have to do something dramatic to break that. And I think this is a chance for them to do that.
And Jon-Eric Sullivan going about it the right way. And we talk about those grades, guys, and let's pick this up on the other side. The grades that matter. How close are we to a Super Bowl? And to Z's point, players coming to sign here, that's going to be the ultimate determination right there. How close are they to winning? Well, what are we thinking? What are our thoughts about that? We'll talk to you about that on the other side. Quick break for the YouTubers. We keep it going on your Dolphin Squad Show on the Locked On Podcast Network. And to Kyle's point, the number 7 podcast channel on the number 1 sports podcast network. I mean, that's almost like we talked about the Dolphins trading from 11 to 7, Kyle. That 10-7 jump, that's pretty significant, man. If these were fight rankings, we might be talking title shot here soon.
Maybe it's a sign. Who knows for the draft? But we mentioned the Saints, and this is just a one-off. I think the favorite thing that I've learned in the past year of doing sports media is I did a story on the Saints for the 33rd team last year. Did you guys know that Mickey Loomis, who's the GM and has been the GM since like 2002, not only did he teach Tom Benson's wife, Gail Benson, who's now the primary owner of the team because Tom's passed, everything about football because she wasn't a football fan when she started dating Tom back in the early 2000s. Mickey Loomis is in the will. Mm-hmm. He's in the Benson will to execute the estate for the Saints because they want to sell the team because when Gail passes and give the proceeds back to the city of New Orleans, which I think is awesome. But if you had a trivia question, what NFL general manager is number 2 in the owner's will? Who is it?
Wow. You'd have thought it was Chris Greer for a while.
Yeah. No, yeah, he's untouchable, that's for sure.
That's crazy. Yeah, the lengths that they go to pass these teams down. Look at Carly Ursay-Gordon. Very hands-on with the Colts, right? Very hands-on. And Z, you were out in St. Louis. Who was it? Georgia Frontiere, right? Remember that?
Georgia Frontiere was our majority owner, and then Stan Kroenke was the minority owner.
Yep, crazy when you think about it. But the lengths that people have to go to, and as we move, guys, from a league where it was individual owners, right, where Al Davis could be a coach and then an owner in the same league, and now we're at a point where, man, these families are struggling to hold on. We saw the Buss family. I know different sport, but the Buss family sold the Lakers. If you think about Dr. Jerry Buss and how synonymous he was with the league and the growth of the NBA and Showtime and Magic and the Bird Celtics and the Magic Lakers and, you know, Shaq and Kobe and the Buss family just ingrained in the sport, right? Never think that they'd be gone from the sport. But in the NFL, we've seen it too. We've seen a changing of the guard where a lot of the old school owners are going to be gone. We're even going to see hedge funds and investment groups owning teams. And the number one,
have to.
Yeah, the topics of conversations coming out of the owners' meetings, guys, aren't what they used to be. Now we're talking about, the Rooney Rule again, unfortunately, as we should be, because they're doing a terrible job with that. And we're talking about succession plans for teams and more TV money and how owners can keep that TV money from players. And it's everything but the game again, Z, coming out of these owners' meetings.
Well, it's usually what it is, though. I mean, a little bit of the game gets talked to the owners' meetings. I mean, majority of the game was talked about at the combine, and it's talked about, not in the media. It's behind closed doors, and then all other stuff about how we're going to grow this money, and that's what they bring all the other groups in, because that's how you get your big money. That's how you get your billions. Like I said, there's only a few people in this world that can buy a team outright. The Waltons, and they bought one. They really kind of own two because Mr. Kroenke is married to a Walton family member, so you have them, and then you have Bezos. If he wants to go buy a team, he can afford it. He can write the check, but there ain't many more of those people out there anymore that can buy it solely, and a lot of people don't. They want to. You have a couple other people, mixed in. Josh Harris brought in Magic and a couple other of his close friends that he grew up with. They were all had big businesses, and to buy the Commanders a few years ago. So you're going to start seeing that more and more, and a lot of them just don't own more than one sports team across the venue. Like Mr. Kroenke, he owns 2 soccer teams, a basketball team, a stadium, a hockey team, that's what they do, and so does Josh Harris. He's got the Sixers, right, and the Flyers, I think,
or the Jersey Devils. It's
Devils.
The Sixers and Jersey Devils. Yeah.
Yeah, Kroenke's the real money guy in LA too. And when you think about the ownership over the years changing hands, some of the older families are gone. They're changing hands in Buffalo, but you still have some of the, the Bidwells are still around, the McCaskey Hallis family in Chicago. There's still some of those old school original ownership groups, but very few and far between now as the landscape just continues to change and the numbers just get bigger. These TV contracts are getting so big, Z, that now the NFL is partnering with media outlets because they just cost so much money. No one can afford it.
Well, yeah. I mean, like I say, that's why you have these, hedge fund people going to start buying teams because you can't afford it. The money's too big, and these owners don't want to give it up because they make a lot of money. Ever since the players screwed up that that CBA, years and years ago, the owners struck it rich and they're making more money. I'm not saying players don't make a lot of money, but how it was before with Gene Upshaw, the players had the stick and they controlled all the money. They had, over 50% of the money revenue coming in, and that went away real fast. And,
they weren't willing to miss the games, right?
Yeah.
If once they kind of caved on that, you felt like all the leverage kind of the bottom fell out on it.
And then the deal they took was not the best deal because they had a better deal before that. And then the owners balked on it and said, no, this is all we're giving you. And they hurry up and signed it. Because like I said, they didn't want to lose those game checks.
The Hunts, the Davises, the Rooneys. I mean, Jerry Jones, part of the old guard now, right, of NFL owners, and the old school is disappearing more and more as it continues.
Mike Brown.
Yeah, Mike Brown.
With the Bengals. He was the assistant general manager of the Bengals going back to 68, Mike Brown.
Yeah.
Skin from the fingernails, the Bidwells and the Browns. Go figure. The worst two are the ones that are still there, the Browns and the Bidwells. Go figure. Out of all the ownership groups, the worst two are somehow still holding on. And historically speaking, you'd have to say the Cardinals and the Bengals have the two worst ownership groups. No, you throw the Browns in there, and the Haslams have owned it now. So when did they buy it? The Haslams, whatever ownership group they bring in is terrible. 2012 is when Jimmy and Dee Haslam bought the Browns. They own a bunch of convenience stores on the side of the highway in the Midwest and trucking stations and all that. So whoever they bring in is it. But as far as OG original ownership groups for the Bidwells and the Browns to still be holding on,
Rooneys,
man,
Roonies.
Yeah, I wouldn't put the Rooneys in their category. I think they've been a really good ownership group.
Yeah, but that was an original.
Yep, original
ownership group.
And the Fords in Detroit. They still own it.
Sheila Ford now, I believe.
Yeah.
Yep. And the Bears, McCaskey's in Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
Hunt's in Kansas City, right?
Yep. Clark Hunt.
Yeah, I don't think there's any.
But he lives in Dallas. Next to Jerry Jones. That's what's funny. On the same street, I think.
Yeah, it's more like the Glazers who own they own like Man U and the Bucks and those types of owners. Like to Kyle's point, what Stephen Ross is doing with F1. I mean, F1 wipes their butt with NFL money. I mean, Kyle was talking about it. That is serious cash.
Oh God, yeah, without a doubt.
I was thinking about going down the other year, and I was like, never mind. Took one look at it. I said, no, that's more than one weekend's worth for me. So no, thank you. I'm good.
F1 Squad Show, guys. What do you think?
Yeah, right. Yeah. If they're not going to send Kyle to the owners meeting, they're not going to send us to the F1 race.
We're talking about all these guys who have way more money than we'd ever imagine. But, I guess we started by talking about Wayne Huizenga and then Stephen Ross. The Dolphins have had good ownership groups. Now, Joe Robbie was pretty well known for being a stick in the mud, right? And an old school type of dude. Edwin Pope would tell you, Joe Robbie stories forever. But I came up and I was in college when it was Don Shula, right? And I went to school at the University of Miami, and I got there right as everybody, Kyle, was, the games passed him by. Jimmy's in the Keys. He's right there. What do you need? And so I always felt horribly for the legend, Don Shula, who completely put football on the map in South Florida, built the Dolphins organization from scratch in spite of Joe Robbie. I'll say it, in spite of Joe Robbie, and made the Dolphins. To Kyle's point, I think he said it last show, the Dolphins were one of 3 to 5 organizations throughout the 70s and 80s that when you talked NFL, you talked Steelers, Cowboys, Raiders, Dolphins, right? And the Dolphins were one of those organizations under Shula. So then the transition happens with Jimmy Johnson and the big fight with Dan Marino, and Marino doesn't call his own plays anymore, and Jimmy doesn't like Dan, and Dan doesn't, and it gave Neil Rogers 5 years of content on his radio show with Hank and with Jim Mandich. But the crazy thing about it was that was as good as the Dolphins would ever be. Do you feel like now, Kyle, with this new group, with what Jon-Eric Sullivan, hey, don't even bother trying to get Achane. He's untouchable. This is not a fire sale. This is not, hey, just light it on fire and get the insurance check. This is not that at all, very clearly. And it's being made clear to all of us and to people around the league that he said no one's untouchable, but basically the Packers would have to blow his mind for Achane. So it isn't, last one out, grab your helmet. It's not that. It's a rebuild, and some of these pieces, Brewer is another one, Patrick Paul's another one, cornerstones of that rebuild. So I think it's important, Kyle, as I ask you this, if you feel like you're closer now than you ever have been since Shula and Jimmy transition, but to be very clear that it's not a dumpster fire and it's not a fire sale at all.
Yeah, I think you have a chance, right? Because you've made changes and I think you have good process. And you can go back to when Steve bought the team and he bought 49% in 2008 and then bought the majority interest or the majority share in 2009. And Bill Parcells left at the drop of a hat, right? So Jeff Ireland was the GM there. Tony Sperano was the coach there when he bought the team. He didn't pick those guys. They went through the stuff with Jim Harbaugh at Stanford and the circus with Sperano. And then you kind of alternated between keeping the coach and keeping the GM and then keeping the coach and getting rid of the other guy. And you did that for every other year for 10 years, really, is what it felt like going up to Chris Grier got the GM title in 2016, but even still, he had Tannenbaum come in over top of him the year after that. And that was the year that they hired Adam Gase. So I think you could look at, it took about 10 years for Ross as somebody who was a very successful businessman on the outside of the NFL to come in and buy a team. And he's learned some lessons the hard way. And they took a lot of ugly lumps. But to his credit, he was never one to skimp on resources for the team, and look at what he's built. And it was Marcel Louis-Jacques from ESPN who just got done saying, I think it was last week, the perception around the GM job for the Dolphins, when that was the only vacancy that was available, was that it was a good job because Ross had given Chris Grier patience and time to try to build the team that he wanted to build. Imagine saying that 10 years ago, when they were alternating firing the coach and the GM every other year, right? Like, it was a totally different ballgame, and it took time and it took patience and it took, frankly, more leash than I think Chris probably deserved. I'd have moved on from Chris after 24. But with what the cap situation was, what your resources were, you were still salary cap deficient. You were still super high in cash burn. You didn't have the draft resources that you had as a surplus. What kind of GM candidate were you going to hire with Mike McDaniel as a pre-existing coach that you weren't going to allow him to make a decision on? Tua Tagovailoa into the first year of the contract extension that they gave him. It was just not an attractive job. So I think the fact that they brought somebody from the outside in, they went through the process in a totally different way. They embraced a total reset. They brought in everybody at the same time that's fully aligned. You can thumb your nose at the fact that they were all at Green Bay together if you want to. Like, I don't care. I still think it's good process that these guys know each other. They trust each other. They speak the same language. And that gives you as good of a chance as you have to actually have the breakthrough that we're hoping that they have.
Yeah, everything aligns within itself and with one another, I think, is the key for me, Z, too. When I look at it, there's organizational lineage now. Everything connects. This isn't this guy's coach with this guy's GM and this guy this and that guy's that. And the lawsuit seems like it's becoming a distant memory more and more. The penalties with the picks and all that, the deals, the injuries with Tyreek Hill, they just look smaller and smaller in that rearview mirror as you continue to move forward. And to me, that's the number one thing I see with this regime, Z. They keep moving forward. They have a very clear plan. I think it was Jon-Eric Sullivan, the number one thing I heard him say at the owners' meeting with that whole group that Barry Jackson talked about, with that whole Miami group in there. Malik Willis is not a bridge. Quote, Malik is our guy. Malik is an ascending player. It was important for us to get him on a 3-year deal. We want to build around him. It's not a Band-Aid. That's Malik Willis. That's the way they're looking at their QB1. Even the Waddle trade, he was due to make more money, could have asked for an extension, and the receiver money is getting huge right now. So you trade him and get the most that you can. You say Achane's untouchable and you're building around him. That's how fans get things like hope, Z, and you realize it's not a complete teardown because we've been through so many complete teardowns in South Florida. I don't know if people could take another one.
No, yeah. I mean, you just listen to the head coach and the general manager, what they're saying, how they're building this team. Listening to half talk and how he talked about the quarterback, how he, cares about the guys around him. He's a hard worker and all the great things he was saying, that's what you want to hear. And that's from a quarterback. you got to be excited about that. You got him, at a good price, and he showed some good game tape last year, and he's going to ascend. He's going to pull this team together, I think, and and it's not a complete rebuild, like you said. And the great thing about it is how they went about it. Also, we've talked about it many times. Is they took all the hit this year on that salary cap, the big hit, and then you start anew next year. You got all these good picks, get these good young players. And you signed some veterans on 1-year deals. Half talked about that in his presser, right? Mm-hmm. How he's can't wait to get those guys on the field to see how hungry they are, to help them become, better players and get contracts either with the Dolphins or somewhere else. And that's what, as a coach, that's what you want to do, And he half kept saying it over in his interview about how excited he is. I think it was next week, phase 1 starts or whatever, how excited he is to get his hands on the players. Like any coach, at this time of year, you're sick of watching college tape. You're sick of writing reports. You're sick of looking at the other coaches because that's all you see in the building right now is this, other coaches, the strength staff, the trainers, and that's really by a few players here and there. But the majority of the mass ain't in there yet, and you can't meet with them. You can't have that little hour or 45 minutes of meeting time just to watch tape and talk about, football with the players because that's what, as a coach, that's what you want. And Half kept saying it, how he could not wait. And that's what, I feel excited for this team for this year.
I know another guy he said he likes is Malik Washington with the ball in his hands. And, there's some new receivers coming in. Tutu when he's, you know what I mean? I like him as well. So it's going to be interesting to see, but very, very clear on Malik Willis. They're talking about him being a cornerstone of this franchise and a pillar to build around with this team. They say that nothing, and I'm paraphrasing here, Kyle, but nothing rattles him. His confidence doesn't waver. You can throw anything at him, and the kid is going to respond. Plus, he's got the elite arm strength, speed, strength. He's got it all. I mean, you don't see the field in the NFL year 1 as a rookie if you don't have those things, even though it didn't go so well for him in Tennessee. But he gets a shot here. And then talking about Achane, calling him a rare player. This is Jon-Eric Sullivan saying his feet, acceleration, his ability to play on all 3 downs, a very good pass catcher. And you're talking about a guy in Achane, Pro Bowler in 2025, 5.7 yards per carry, 1,350 yards on the ground with 8 touchdowns, 67 catches, 488 through the air as well, yards for Achane. So they're building around Willis. They're building around Achane. They're building around that offensive line with Brewer and Patrick Paul and all these sites. And everybody can talk. Kyle, real quick, we'll hit the break and we'll come back and get your thoughts on this about, the players who weren't named by Jon-Eric Sullivan. Yeah, because he only did name 3. So it's kind of funny how all these articles and stories are coming up saying, oh, so-and-so better watch out because, he didn't get his GM's vote of approval. But the guy literally named 3 players, and he could end up theoretically trading 2 of them because you never know in this business. Let's wrap it up on the other side. Dolphin Squad Show on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Yeah, funny how the trade rumors are on 2 of those 3 guys, Kyle. I caught that as I'm saying that. Achane and Jordan Brooks are 2 of those 3 guys, along with Brewer, mentioned again by Jon-Eric Sullivan as the quote-unquote pillars, right? Did I get that word right? Did he say pillars?
Yeah, it's 3 of the pillars. And I think the reason why those guys were in the conversation and not maybe Patrick Paul is Patrick Paul's got 2 years left on his rookie contract, where those other 3 guys, they've already said that they're intending on working on extensions for all 3 of those players, right? So the focus so much being, are you going to move a guy? If the answer is yes, it's probably a guy that you don't have multiple years of cost control with, right? Where you're going to have to make a decision on whether you want to level up what you pay him and give him more years and more guarantees, or do you alternatively move on and get what you can for a guy without having to pay the cash, right? So I think that's why so much of the conversation and what Sully's talking about is centered around those 3 names. But you go back to January and Patrick Paul was in that conversation. And I don't remember if it was Sully or Halfley, but in one of the conversations that those guys had this week, they talked about the offensive line. I think it was Jon-Eric Sullivan with the South Florida media group that was there at the owners' meetings, talked about really excited about left tackle and center, open competition at right guard. Austin Jackson is under evaluation because he needs to stay healthy. And Jonas Vainaya needs to be more consistent than what he was as a rookie. So 3 spots kind of up in the air and wide open for the taking. But both Pat Paul and Aaron Brewer got very strong votes of confidence in one of the non-viral quotes that went around throughout the course of this week.
And those are the ones you're going to get from Kyle, as well as the viral one. Z, when you start hearing things like, I don't like the word rebuild, and Jon-Eric Sullivan said that he doesn't want to use the word rebuild, doesn't like it, says we're here to win. What does that do for a player who's in that locker room coming back off of what happened last year? All the questions all year long about Mike and about the future and who's going to be the coach and who's going to be here next year, to finally have some direction. You're a guy in that locker room, Z, and I know you say no one can be 100% safe, but if you're a guy who's been here, like a Zach Sealer, for example, you got to be loving this direction right now. You got to be thinking, finally, we have somewhere to go and some wind in our sails on the way there.
Well, yes and no. Again, you're an older player now, and they're getting younger and they're getting cheaper, because of the situation. So you do a little nervous, but you also look at it, all right, I'm on a clean slate. Right, it's all new. I know my position coach is the same. I'm talking about the D-line now. My position coach is the same, but it's a new coordinator. It's a new head coach. It's a new general manager. So I have to go out there and prove myself, my value for this team, and all these new teammates coming in. I have to be the leader. I have to show them, on how to be a hardworking player in a pro. And that's what these cats are going to do, especially these veterans. And they have to do that, or they're going to be gone. I mean, Half's going to put it out there what he's looking for in each player, in each group, each side of the ball. And if guys are not going to conform to it, he's not going to let them go. I don't think Half's going to care because, again, he wants to build it his way. It's not a rebuild, but it's the Halfley way. It's the Sully way. But I'm going to say Halfley because he's the head coach. He's the big toe. He wants it his way, his demeanor, his attitude, and his style of football. If you don't fit in, they're going to get rid of you. I don't care who it is. They're going to start from the bottom and work their way up. Yeah, we're not going to call it a rebuild. We're just going to call it building his way. And that's what it's going to be, the halfway.
All right, well, let me ask you this, both Z and Kyle. I want to get a response from both of you on this one because Aaron Glenn is in the news. The New York Jets head coach talking about Geno Smith like he's the second coming of Broadway Joe. We love Geno Smith. He's going to take us to the promised land. And then you have Jon-Eric Sullivan. We wanted Malik Willis. He wasn't a backup plan. We wanted him for 3 years because of this and because of that. And I don't know. I'm not going to ask you which team believes its own and drinks its own Kool-Aid more, guys. But what I'm wondering is, which quarterback do you think has a better chance to succeed? And as of right now, which quarterback will succeed more this year? Geno Smith with the Jets or Willis with the Dolphins?
Willis with the Dolphins. That's all I'm going to say, Gries.
Okay.
Willis
There's a lot
with
of
the
conviction
Dolphins.
in that, Z.
Oh, there's a lot of conviction. And we'll have we'll watch it week to week. But to me, Willis is 10 times better.
Because Geno had a bad year, obviously, in Oaktown. Well, in Vegas. Let's call them the Raiders. With the Raiders.
Yeah, I get it, but it's the Jets.
Yeah. Kyle?
Yeah, I think Geno's better than what he played last year, but
Yeah.
I would still bet on the familiarity element of what Malik Willis has as compared to Geno going to work with Frank Reich and figuring that all out. And they've had some changes on the offensive line where they got a new starting guard. They still need to figure out the rest of their wide receiver room. Frank's last couple stops haven't been particularly productive for him in the first place. And I know Bobby Slowick didn't have a great end of tenure in Houston. His second year kind of regressed from what his first season was. But I just think the younger player who's the ascending player, I think maybe Geno starts more consistent at the beginning of the year, but you're going to get to the end of that season and Malik's going to get a full season's worth of reps, health willing. And I think you'll see him being the player who's playing consistently better football, especially in the back half of the season.
Yeah, and he has Achane too, obviously, behind him. And I think that the Dolphins, as of right now, have a much better offensive line than the Jets, and their system is a nice one for Malik Willis as well. All right, guys, I have another one for you. Who has a better year this year? And I have to ask a question about the draft after this to follow it up. But who has a better year this year, Fernando Mendoza or Cam Ward? Last year's number one, this year's number one.
I really like what the possible fit is with Daboll and with Ward. And I also like the fit of Mendoza and Kubiak. But I think Ward having the year of experience, I think going out and getting a Wan'Dale Robinson in free agency, I think that's a nice add. I think Tennessee's going to add another player in the draft. Give me the guy with the year's experience. So I'll go with Cam Ward, I think, has a better season.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Ward, and it's more because he's going to have a defense. Whereas I don't think the Raiders' defense is going to be that good this year compared to Tennessee's. Sal's going to bring his little magic over there, and that's just going to help Ward to be able to play football, not chase football. Not chasing points to try to win. Where at the Raiders, that's what I think it's going to be. They're going to have to outscore people early, in the season, of course, just to be competitive. Whereas I think Tennessee's going to be more balanced. And for me, a quarterback on a balanced team plays a lot better.
Yeah, and if they take Maui Noah or they take Love, it doesn't matter. You're helping Cam Ward out either way with an offensive lineman to block for him or a running back to give the ball to him. And as we close this show, we got a few more minutes, guys. And I can't help but think like this automatic assumption Mendoza's the best player in the draft and the best QB in the draft, which I'm not 100% sure he is for my money. And if I'm picking number one, I'm damn sure not sure. So, Z, is there a way the Raiders could be making a big mistake by taking him number one? I know you need a QB. You want a face of the franchise. So you got Tom Brady there. But, man, there's some really good players sitting there behind him in this draft where if you miss on him, some of those guys are going to be – a couple of them might even end up in Canton, Z.
Yeah, but, you need a quarterback. And he's the best quarterback in the draft. Like I say, he may not be the best player in the draft, but when you're picking number one, you're picking it for a reason. You're not just picking the best player in the draft. You're there because you have a big need, and their big need is quarterback. So you have to draft him. That's your number one thing, or you wouldn't be sitting there. You know what I'm saying? That's the bottom line. It's not like you had a great quarterback and somehow you had the first pick overall, but that's usually because you traded with someone a year or two before. And they were so bad that you got their pick at number one. And then you could pick the best player on the board. But most teams, if you're picking in the top 5, you're there for a reason. And you have a need, a glaring need. And their glaring need is quarterback. They're going to take my man.
Would any of these teams take Mendoza? The Jets, Cardinals, and Titans? Titans wouldn't, but the Jets or Cardinals probably would. I was going to say the Raiders could trade down and still get their guy that they want. It'd be interesting. Kyle, what are your thoughts on all that? Do you feel like there's any way that the Raiders are just really blowing this one if they take Mendoza and not anybody coming up behind him there?
Do I see a world in which Mendoza doesn't work out in the NFL? Sure. I don't think any player slam dunk proof from not working out and having success. And I think there's some legit questions with the wide receiver room that the Raiders have. And the offensive line last year was an abject disaster, despite the fact that they invested pretty well with it on the offensive line. They used 2 third-round picks. And Caleb Rogers and Charles Grant. The year before that, they used a top 50 pick on Jackson Powers Johnson, and he didn't hit it off with the coaching staff with Pete Carroll, so they kind of benched him. They had a couple established starters like Colton Miller attack. Like they had pieces. It was just a disaster. And I don't think Fernando's dynamic and off schedule enough to really thrive if they really continue to struggle on the offensive line. But with the leverage point of where you're at in the draft and how important the position is, I can't justify them saying, hey, we'll come back and get it next year. Or, hey, we'll trade up from 36. I think the drop-off from Mendoza to Simpson is so steep for me that, Fernando's my 10th rated player in the class, and I think Simpson's 55 or something like that. Like, there's a pretty big chasm there. And with how important that position is, if you're in that position to get that guy and help create an identity in what's otherwise been a largely missing identity franchise in a very competitive division, that's a really tough sell for me. So I can't guarantee it's going to work with Fernando, but I think it's the right process decision and the right value at the position to take him regardless. And now it's around you to put the best players around him to give him the chance to be successful. And that's why I like the Kubiak hire.
You look at the history of the NFL, it's dicey, to say the least, about taking a quarterback number one. Even a guy like Jim Plunkett won a Super Bowl with the Raiders after the Patriots picked him number one. Terry Bradshaw, John Elway, who never played for the Colts after they picked him number one. Then you get into guys like Troy Aikman and Peyton Manning. Obviously, those ones really worked out. Eli Manning worked out. Cam Newton, you could say, worked out, won an MVP. Joe Burrow took his team to a Super Bowl. But, man, the Michael Vicks, the Alex Smiths, the Sam Bradfords, Trevor Lawrence, Baker Mayfield. I mean, it is, wow, man. If you miss with a QB at number one, I mean, that could bury your franchise for years and years.
But that goes to the point that Z made, right? It's you are picking in that stratosphere for a reason.
Yeah.
And all of those guys, it's a graveyard of guys that could not be a single-handed savior for a franchise. And you can even look at Joe Burrow, right? Like the success that they had the first couple years that Joe was there, his second and third season, they're getting fully healthy seasons of Joe Burrow and they're 500, right? So even he's not able to fully save a franchise all by himself with these great receivers that they put around him too. So that's part of the debate. And that's why I like the swing of the bat that the Dolphins took with Willis, because, hey, he's kind of like a draft pick, but you didn't have to use a draft pick to get him. You kind of know what he is. And you can use your draft capital to help build up the situation around him with guys that he's going to grow with. And you have more at your disposal as compared to the Raiders taking Fernando, and they're that much worse than the Dolphins were. And now you got to wait till 36 to make your first pick, where the Dolphins get 2 picks before you get your next pick.
Man, and this is the organization that drafted Jamarcus Russell, Z. They drafted Jamarcus Russell. If they miss on this one, though, if Mendoza doesn't end up working out for some reason, I mean, just for the Raiders, when you could be looking at lining up Arvell Reese on the opposite side of the ball as Max Crosby, who's going to block that, Z? I mean, there's a lot of stuff that you could do with that pick. And I know they're going to take Mendoza, and I know I'm just stirring it up here, but I'm not in love with the kid, man. And I got to be honest with you, I think it's 50-50. It's a coin flip on him.
You don't like him because why? He beat the Canes?
He beat
the Canes? Let it go, Gries. Let it go. Let it go. Come on, man.
I just don't think.
You don't have to like him.
Raider fan, do you want him right now, Z? If you're in that locker room, do you want him right now? You do?
Yeah. I need somebody. Again, we have a chance. If the kid pans out, he's going to be great for us. Again, anybody you pick in this draft class may not pan out. You see it all the time. He's for sure, hit wonder, blah, blah, blah. And he doesn't pan out. And then you got a guy, last pick of the draft, and he goes to the Super Bowl, Brock Purdy. You know what I'm saying? That's the nature of this beast. That's why we love this game so much, the uncertainty. You just never know. You could pick the next Peyton Manning, number 1 overall, right? He goes out and blows his knee out, and he never plays again. You're in the same situation as if you take Mendoza and he doesn't pan out, right? That's how you view it. You roll the dice. No matter who you draft, you're rolling the dice. You just never know what you're getting, But that's the thing. He put some good stuff out on tape. I hear he throws a great ball. He's laser on it and everything. I hear a lot of things from people that have worked out with him, not just coaches and whatever at these passing camps and all this stuff. They said the kid is unbelievable. And I believe him because I trust some of these people. Some of these are ex-players, teammates of mine. So, yeah, I think, again, I don't know quarterback play. I get all that. But I know that this kid has got a chance to change his franchise. It's going to take a couple of years because they got to put a lot of pieces around him. And on both sides of the ball, they got to fix. But he's got a chance. If he stays healthy, he's got a chance, I think.
All things being equal, last question for me for both you guys. All things being equal, would you rather be in the Raiders' position at quarterback or the Dolphins' position at quarterback?
Dolphins.
Willis all day, right?
Yeah.
All day.
And for me, it comes down to risk assessment. You don't have to use the first overall pick in him. He's financially cheaper from a guarantees perspective than what the number 1 overall pick in the draft is. He's got 2 years of development in the NFL with people that he's going to be working with moving forward, and then an additional 2 years of NFL experience and maturity to kind of have to develop himself. Now, I think the ceiling of outcomes is really interesting debate because Willis has better tools. Now he's older, but he's theoretically just scratching the surface. So the belief and conviction that the group that is running this team has in him, I think it's as good of a swing as the bat as they could have possibly taken a quarterback this year. Now, if they had the number 1 overall pick in the draft and you knew that was available to you, would I advocate if you didn't get Malik Willis to draft Fernando Mendoza? Yes, absolutely I would. And I think that'd be a cool story because he's right, from the area. So he also understands the rigors of how to be successful in South Florida and the community that he'd be stepping into. But I think when you look at the full picture and the direction of the team and who's running it, and then you put the economics of it, I think there's less risk involved for the Dolphins for an even higher payout because the physical tools are better for Malik.
Yeah. And the upside for Malik Willis with that to play above and beyond that contract is huge, and they're going to get something done with Achane, and that offense is going to be exciting. I'll tell you that. You're not going to have a quarterback back there anymore who you're worried about getting hit and being out of the game. I mean, and you got a guy who can extend plays with his feet, so it'll be interesting to see. And by the way, just for everybody out there to know, Ty Simpson came in for a 30 visit, the quarterback from Alabama. He may not be there at 43, will probably be there at 30. And I know we've talked about it on the show, Kyle and Z. You guys don't want the Dolphins to take him, but he was in for a visit, and he could be there, probably will be there, maybe will be there, the more I think about it, at 30, but probably no way he'll be there at 43.
What a great incentive for somebody to trade up to the 30th overall pick and make sure they get him so we don't. Would be a real shame if that were to happen. That's my final thought.
He's calling the shots these days, man.
He mics out. Look at you.
The wink and the mic drop. Z, what's your final thought today?
Oh, I had a great day today with you guys. It's such a pleasure to be in the middle of the week and talking to you guys.
Thanks, Z.
Yeah,
that's my final thought.
Great show, guys. My final thought is don't draft Fernando Mendoza, but I'm not a Raiders fan.
Oh, God.
I'm going to clip it.
Take him.
Send it to the Raiders squad.
Yeah.
Send it over.
I mean, I was going to say he won't even make the Pro Bowl, but everybody makes the Pro Bowl. So maybe I should find another barometer to judge him by. But another great show, guys. Appreciate you. The number 7 channel, number 7 and climbing. And by the way, the Canes is top 10 also. So yeah, I'm involved with greatness with Kyle Krabs and Alex Dono. Appreciate those two guys laying it down so that we can all follow and draft in on their coattails and get all those numbers. But all kidding aside, make sure you keep coming back for the best coverage in the sport. Locked On Dolphins with Kyle Krabs. Man, we're on YouTube. We're wherever you download your audio version. So if you just do the audio, come find us on YouTube. If you just do the YouTube, find us on the audio side. And everybody come find us on Roku as well. We'll be back next Monday with another episode of your Dolphin Squad Show. Keep your game tight and your mind right. Keep watching Kyle Krabs on Locked On Dolphins.